So right before I hit record, you were saying YouTube doesn't like you, or at least your
You
content, I'm guessing.
YouTube, the viewers that YouTube has decided to show my content to absolutely despise me. I get the most hateful, mean-spirited comments on YouTube. It's really crazy. I'll post the same video there that I do maybe on TikTok or Instagram, and I'm just getting lots of love from those platforms
Yeah,
and encouragement and telling me that I'm inspiring people. And
for
on
sure.
YouTube, yeah, I mean, they're vicious. Like, you probably went to prison for prostitution, or I mean, just crazy.
Sounds horrible.
Yeah. So let's actually, can we just start off with that? You got in trouble. You went to prison. It was
So here,
financial crime.
let me lead this in.
Yeah, please.
So I met you on Instagram because you're a very prolific prison advocate now. And I think you know this, but and our listeners certainly do. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. And so I'm super into the prison reform movement. And I found your content on Instagram and followed you. And since then we've been in touch, and you did some really amazing Christmas card project I was super impressed by. And I love when she makes recipes, and it
Oh
makes
no,
me
yeah,
so
same.
happy. It
Yeah.
makes me so happy. So I think what Chris is asking is, you did 10 years in the Texas State Penitentiary, correct?
I did.
Okay. Can you tell us how you got there?
And it's,
Well, I took some money. Yeah, I took some money that didn't belong to me.
Mhm.
And it was through my workplace. So I got a theft charge and got sentenced to 20 years and ended up doing 10.
So
so,
much time.
and not to belabor that because it's huge. What, in like an elevator pitch in a sort of way, like what type of person were you going in? And then I'll ask you probably the same thing. Like, what did you realize now coming out who you were as a person?
Going in, I was from the outside looking in, very much the middle class, probably on the lower end of middle class, working mom, baseball mom, coached little league cheerleading, PTA meetings, work, all of that. And on the inside, I was a lot of trying to keep up with the Joneses, kind of
Yeah.
wanted to make a good appearance, I had had my children at a young age, so I was always trying to prove that I could make it and that I was successful. And it was not an easy existence.
Did you know that going in about yourself?
No,
Or did it something
I
you
did
figured?
not.
Okay, yeah. And just to give you context, why I'm asking is I've been through some rough stuff, over history, as most people have too. And you have this cadence of gratefulness about you, in this, like, not to sound too weird or woo woo, but there's this beam of light and this gratefulness that when I watched some of your content, I was like, okay, this girl's been through some stuff, worked through it,
Yeah.
saw the other side of it, and has completely, you know, and not to say everyone completely found who they are, but you kind of found yourself in this process. And now you're on this completely different path, and you're much more fuller as a human, and you're just much more you. My offer.
She's very sunshiny.
Yeah.
I love it.
Is that a fair judgment or assessment?
No, that's very much so. Even prior to me committing my crime, which it lasted like about 3 years before I got caught up, and that was like a miserable time. But even prior to that, I was just so worried about what everybody else was thinking of me. I was worried about appearance, just all of that, and
Mhm.
really just after being in the trenches, so to speak, you
Yeah.
realize that none of that matters, and it certainly doesn't make
Yeah.
you happy.
Yeah.
For sure. You have 4 kids, right?
5.
5. Gosh,
Can
I
you
was close.
believe it? Yeah.
How exciting. How
Yeah,
old's
5. I have
your oldest? You have grandkids now, right?
I do. I have 2 little grandsons, and they're awesome. They are the
Exciting.
coolest little dudes ever. So
And
I'll tell you a real quick story about them.
Yeah.
I didn't get to know them while I was in prison. Their parents decided that wasn't something they wanted to expose them to, which I have total respect for. They did know about me, and they did know I was in jail for breaking a rule, right? And I came home to a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old grandsons, and I was really nervous about how they would receive me. And just the very maybe 10 minutes after I pulled in the driveway, my son and his family pulled up, and those little boys just ran to me. One of them had painted a rock, and it was just, I felt a little bit of hope, like I missed out on so much with my kids, but this is an opportunity to still give back to my family in a positive way. And it was really amazing. And they're awesome. I get them every chance I can.
that's so
Do you
great.
think some of that give back spirit pours over in the content you make? As
I
far as
hope
like
it
just
does.
giving back to humanity and showing people, maybe humanizing, if you will, just that whole experience of what it's like to be in prison.
I hope it does. There's a lot of intent in some of my video, and you have to have a mix, right? Because nobody just wants to be like beaten with the cold hard truth of how
Yeah.
awful our system actually is, right? So you have
Horrible.
to do things like make prison pizza and
Yeah.
laugh, and you have to do some things like that. But what I hope to do is, as somebody that was incarcerated coming from a place of privilege,
Hmm.
and really that experience opened so many eyes in my entire family, and we were
Yeah.
just realized parts of society that we didn't even really have any knowledge of. And so I also hope to expose some of that and maybe open some eyes.
Hmm.
uh, so yeah.
So tell me about the chain of events that led you to go, you know what, I'm going to post some stuff online. And then all of a sudden that snowball effect.
That's a great question. My dad and my brother are musicians, and they're very popular in their circle. We're in Fort Worth, Texas, and in that scene. So my parents have this big anniversary party, and it's 3 months after I get out of prison, after I've been gone for a decade. And I'm responsible for a lot of that event planning and getting on stage and introducing musicians and asking people to tip the musicians. And my parents renewed their vows, and so I was up there, and I was saying things. There was several hundred people there, and I'm
You're
saying
an
things like, I'm
emceeing.
just so.
You were, sorry for interrupting. You were like emceeing a legitimate event.
Yes, yes, and it was our families, and it was friends of my families, and
Yeah.
my parents' friends, not necessarily people that knew me, and not necessarily close knit friends, but
Hmm.
it was a big party. It was a big party, and I'm saying things like, "I'm just so happy to be home and be able to be a part of this," and I can see confusion in a lot of faces as
Yeah.
I'm looking out and saying this, and I'm
Oh,
realizing, oh, people don't know that I've been gone. And
oh,
so
wow.
after that, I had a conversation with my parents, and I'm like, I think y'all didn't tell people I was in prison, like. And my dad said, well, here's the deal. We told our close friends, but we didn't just put it out there because
Hmm.
we didn't know how you would feel when you came home. And that's your story, right? And
That's
I can
pretty
respect
rad.
that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's
Yeah,
pretty
I
rad.
felt better. My initial feeling was like, "Oh, they were so ashamed."
Shame.
And of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
there is some shame that comes with it when you have a child that's incarcerated. But after talking to him, I just felt a lot better. So what I did is, um, I had been newly introduced to TikTok and watching some of the videos, and I thought, "Oh, I'll just make a little video." And I made a little video where I kind of showed my mug shot, and it was a little 30-second video saying, I Googled myself and I never should have done it. And then I showed my mug shot, and I put it on my parents' Facebook page. And just so, like, here I am,
Yeah.
everybody.
Surprise.
Mostly I just,
Just rip
exactly.
the
I
band-aid.
wanted, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted everybody to know, that it's a part of my story. It's not
Mhm.
my whole story, but it happened. And just the same way as if I had been a teacher the last 10 years and you had questions about that, I've been to prison the last 10 years, and if you have questions, you can ask me, uh, and it worked. So from that, people started asking me questions on videos, and I just started answering. So,
Literally, in fact, that's
That
when you
is,
think about it, that's literally it. You're just answering
yeah.
questions.
And I love
mhm.
how, so from my perspective, right? Like some of the greatest people I've ever known in my life have been my clients. And people make mistakes and they do things that they shouldn't have done, but that's not who they are. And there's so much more to people I represent who are now my friends than a conviction. Um, and I love how open you are. And like people ask, I always tell my clients, like, ask me the stupid questions. Like I'll get you an answer. Like they're embarrassing questions people want answers to, that like people who are going up or people who have family members who are about to serve some time. There are questions people have, and your candor and your willingness to answer those sometimes awkward, but always very real questions, I think is what draws people to you, that you're honest about what life's going to be like. And I think it's just awesome. I'm obsessed.
Thanks for that. I love how you said people make mistakes or bad decisions. And that's one thing about a felony conviction. That one bad decision, it's kind of just carried with you forever, right? But
The rest of your life, yeah.
any average person, I mean, I'm 44, so any
Mhm.
average 44-year-old that looks back on their life has a handful of things that they
Sure.
are so glad everybody doesn't know about.
Sure.
And so it's just it's just something people do need to realize.
And in some
People
ways,
make decisions.
yeah, in some ways it's so unfair because other people, like, I'm sure whatever you were doing, you never thought like, oh, this could land me in prison for 10 years. Um, Other people get to make stupid decisions and live with that on their own, completely separate. But when you end up with a conviction, it changes the rest of your life. And I think it's beautiful, for lack of a better term, that you've been able to spin it into something that's so positive for you. That like it's a part of your story, but there's so much more. And the idea that most people don't realize this, most people know someone who's been to prison.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make them a bad person.
Yeah.
It was a stopping point on their journey, but I think people like to pretend like they don't know people who have done things that are wrong, or they've never done anything wrong, and that's just inaccurate. In fact, most people have committed
Very
crimes and not gotten caught, to be fair.
Yeah. Did you, I mean, I'm kind of jumping around, but did you kind of realize, and you kind of touched on this, that none of it really matters at the end of the day and everything's bullshit? And not to sound so like cynical or doom and gloom, but you know what I mean when I say that. It's like, if it doesn't matter anyway, why was I or they or
Very much so. And I have, I have 3 adult children, um, and all of them, I'll say, are on a healing journey from the
Mm,
trauma of this whole
For
experience. But
sure.
through that, that's something I say often to them. It's all of this that we worry about, disappointing other family members because we're not doing what they think we should, and all of that is it's just that. It's bullshit. It really is. It's really about how you want to live your life authentically and what brings you peace and happiness, and that's it. And you know,
well, I was gonna say, what's been the craziest thing as far as like the social media side? What's been like the craziest thing that you realized about yourself that you didn't know, that maybe you learned? Like, I actually love doing cooking tutorials, or I actually love talking and orating, people or whatever.
yeah, I think that I'm surprised at the I never took myself as one to be kind of somebody that would share my emotions and thoughts, and I just didn't ever realize how therapeutic that actually is. And
For
even
sure.
though it's on social media and it's for everybody, and sometimes I'll record it once and think, oh, I just looked way too, and I'm like, okay, forget it, post,
Yeah.
and
So it's so funny you say that. When we started um recording, I would come into the studio early, like put on a full face of makeup, and now I'm like, nobody cares, dude. And nobody should care.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that that's the raw sort of emotion behind it, is I think what draws people to you. And you have a pretty legit following. to be fair.
Not on YouTube, it sounds like. They don't like you on YouTube. So
Not on
going back
YouTube.
to that, is it the demographic or is it the audience that they're just not having
Yeah,
it?
it's very much when you go into your analytics, like on TikTok, it's 95% women, and on YouTube, I'm at 55% men. And I feel like it doesn't tell me, but if I were to guess, it would be like 55% old white Republican men. So that's how I feel
Yeah.
inside. They're coming for me.
Yeah.
So, since I've joined the show, our analytics don't look like that anymore because white Republican men aren't listening to our show anymore. But that's really interesting that you see a difference between what like TikTok and YouTube. But what would you say, if there is one, have you received any messages from people that like what's the most impactful message or shout out or story that you've received through social media?
There are so many. I get private messages right when I opened my phone this morning. I had 19 DMs on Instagram from people
Wow.
that my son is incarcerated and you're giving me so much hope. I have to turn myself in on Monday for this, and I've just your videos have helped me. It's it's the best part of my day when I open
Sure.
up those kind of messages, and they happen all the time. It's just I think that, a lot of people can relate to my content. Just like you said, everybody knows somebody that's
Hmm.
been in trouble, and I think there's such a stigma behind talking about that. If your brother's locked up or your nephew or your daughter, there's a
Hmm.
stigma to talk about that, and so this is a safe place. So ask
Hmm.
me what you want. And sometimes they won't ask me a question on where I can record with a video with their name. They'll private message me. I just need to know this. I just need my
Mm.
niece is here and can you answer me this? And
Hmm.
sometimes, and I'll just record a video and put the question, but not their name, but I know that um,
You
they
should
don't really want people to know they're asking that kind of stuff.
you should almost get like a voicemail service or a Google phone number or something where people can call in and record and then you can play and then answer it
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
That'd be
That'd be
cool.
That's
yeah.
cool. That's a great idea.
It's I'm
Right?
just
Like
obsessed. Yeah, no, I'm
if
just
you hear
obsessed.
all the yeah.
So, did your kids knew you were locked up?
They did. So I when I left, I had 2 in diapers and 3 in middle school, and I came
Wow.
home to 2 in middle school and 3 adults. They very much did. The little ones knew me from prison visitation.
Hmm.
That's how they didn't remember me being home. They would come to visit even at like 6 and 7 and say things like, "Mom, do you know so and so?" And they would be talking about my brother, "Do you know
Mhm.
Uncle Levi?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's my brother. We grew up together."
Yeah.
I'm and they're, "How do you know him?"
Yeah.
It was confusing for them because it was such a separate world that they knew me in.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they very much knew.
and I think with like the stigma, my office, we get a lot of people who's like, "Oh, dad's at work," or "Mom's working in another place," and it's always hard because I'm like, how do you explain this later?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I'll never forget. This is a long time ago, probably 10 years ago. I was handling a fugitive calendar, which is where people who are going to be extradited to other states either waive their right or say, "Take me." And a little kid came in with his mom and he was like, "Daddy." And I was like, "Oh no. Oh no, here we go." And so his case gets called and he's like, "Come on, daddy." And everyone just like stood there
Mm.
because the kid's like starting to panic. And he's like, "No, come on, daddy." And he's like screaming and crying and had to be hauled out. And no judgment because that father deserved to see his child and that child deserved to see his father, however that had to happen. But it's just, I think people forget that like people who are incarcerated are there because, hopefully they were not wrongly convicted, but something went awry in their lives to get them there. But like the impact stretches so far
Mhm.
beyond the person that's incarcerated to their children, their family, their grandchildren, everybody whose lives they touch are impacted by mass incarceration. And I think it's forgotten a lot of times. And I think that's super sad that people don't
And
consider.
it's not just the families or loved ones of the incarcerated individuals, but because of, I mean, just in my case, so I have, and I'll just say, use my 3 grown children as an example and the mental health issues that they're facing. And
Mhm.
so, how's that affecting their jobs? How is that affecting their education? How is that affecting raising their children, their relationships? It just extends out to our communities in such a
Mhm.
way. I often think, I definitely was guilty of my crime. I definitely, something needed to happen. I broke a rule and I harmed our community by breaking the law. But what would it have looked like if, for in my case, I didn't even have restitution? I got a 20-year sentence. That was their answer. Not to, what if they had put me on house arrest, even for 5 years, and I had to only work to pay back
Mhm.
money? Or what would that have, how much more of a positive impact on our community as a whole would that have looked?
Yeah, that's insane.
How many people, let me start over. Do you wish more people getting out utilized the internet more to help further their lives in a better way?
Very,
And
yes,
how many don't even realize, because like, I'm not trying to make light of this, but I imagine like somebody would come out and they would remember when CDs were first just coming into play. So the ability to start a business, if you will, or a media
Mhm.
channel, if you will, on the, someone's actually calling me on this, you know what I'm saying? Uh, now I forget what question I was asking.
People starting
Oh yeah. Like
over.
how much are people not realizing just, and kind of also tying back to not caring, if you will, like I am who I am and just going to pull forward, like how has it helped you and how much are they not realizing it, you know?
right. Yeah, I think that, first of all, just in the individual aspect of, it's just been very therapeutic to me. It's been um, a complete different, for me, from committing my crime to having all these secrets from everywhere and all this darkness and closed doors. It's
Mhm.
opened so many opportunities for me, and there's just literally everybody knows everything, and there's such a there's such a peace about that,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
So I think individually, but also just in our communities, as for people, I love when somebody's at their job and they're doing great and getting accolades, and their coworkers find out they're a convicted felon. That it brings me such joy. It tickles
Yeah.
me because
Yeah.
people will be like, "Oh, you've been to prison, yeah, and I'm outselling you in my position, and
Yeah.
I'm outworking
Yeah.
you, and I just got a promotion."
Yeah.
And what that does is then it just changes the way people feel about
Sure.
felony convictions, and so, I think social media is helping to do that, a
For
lot, and I
sure.
think it would be great if more people got involved that way, but I
Does
also understand it's not for everybody, right?
Yeah.
does Texas have ban the box laws? Like in Nevada, they can't
Texas,
ask if you're a felon anymore.
yes, they do not have ban the box laws,
I didn't think
and
they did,
so
given
some,
Texas, but
right, yeah, there is a, if they are on the 7-year rule, so when
Mhm.
an employer pulls a background check,
Mhm.
they're only supposed to use the data from the last 7 years as far as criminal history.
Sure.
That definitely doesn't always happen, and then there's
Sure.
all those instances where the head corporation is in Illinois or somewhere that doesn't have the
Mhm.
7, and, uh, yeah, I've seen so many people get all the way through interview process to onboarding, and then that background check comes back and they say, "Sorry, you had a possession charge in 2010," and I mean, it's just ridiculous.
And it's so disappointing because people who have been released and are starting over and want to contribute and want to live a normal life and want to show people that they're better than that conviction are cornered. And they're not given the opportunity. And that leads to recidivism, which is what we are trying to prevent in the first place.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And we
It's
have the
crazy to me.
highest, which you
Yep.
I'm sure you know that, the
Oh yeah.
highest of any democratic nation ever, United States, good old United States, number one. We should be embarrassed, frankly. We should be embarrassed by that
Yeah.
number.
We should be embarrassed by a lot of things revolving around mass incarceration in this country. For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. Especially because there's other options like in where we live, Las Vegas. The Clark County Detention Center is the state's largest provider of mental health care.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really scary.
That
scares me, her reaction
Yeah.
to that number. That means that's some serious ass shit.
people get locked up and they're, they can't afford their meds. They can't get their meds. They commit some misdemeanor, low level crime. They get locked up for 60 days. They get 7 days of medication when they're released after they've been stabilized. They're released to the streets and they can't get their meds. Get in here. We go again.
The loop.
The loop. Yeah. And it's sad. It's super sad that that's what, for me, it's just super sad that like we as a society look at people and we're like, yeah, that's what you're worth. You're worth 60 days in custody and a 7-day supply of your medication. We'll see you again in a couple months. Like there's just so much more. People could be so much more and they are so much more. And it's just hard to watch. And I can't imagine how hard it is to live inside and see people struggle because of something that's not their fault.
Yeah.
That's not, and nobody woke up and said like, I wish I was a bipolar schizophrenic today. Nobody wakes up and wants their life to be more difficult.
No.
Which is.
How about this? Because all of a sudden we're talking about doom and gloom. I want to hear your questions.
So one of the things we do on the show is we ask a bunch of really silly, ridiculous questions. And we ask some that aren't ridiculous. So my first question is, what is the most interesting thing people don't know about you? Not about prison, not about your time in prison, not about any of that.
I feel like I've built such a outward appearance of prison life that it might take me a second. The most interesting thing.
It's a good question, right? When you think about it.
It really is. I am a little bit witchy. I sage my house and I like do the cinnamon thing at the first of the month. And
do you put your stones out with the moon and all that stuff?
I do.
They activate.
So I do. So am I. I think he's laughing because so am I. My friends come over and they're like, what's all this candle stuff? I'm like, just leave it alone. Don't touch my stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool. Right. What do you think was the thing that you missed most, not aside from your family, but like thing we take for granted while you were gone?
Emerging in water, swimming, baths.
That's
that
interesting.
sensation of I love to swim and I love the water and I missed that and dreamt about that my entire incarceration. That urge or feeling never went away.
Like it's always shower, right? It's never bath, never anything else.
And it's a shower, a little drizzle, not a
not like a rainfall shower head.
This isn't a prison shower.
Yeah. It's a spigot. The half works.
Right.
Sometimes it's like the phones. Don't get me started on the phones. All right. Would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
I could handle 1 horse-sized duck.
That's the new answer lately.
I think that's the new answer.
Yeah, it's a new answer lately.
We may have to change. So we asked.
I'm not changing.
We've asked everybody.
Hundreds.
Yeah, we've asked a lot of people, especially on the show. And originally it was 50-50, or then sometimes more people would pick. But I'd say in the last couple of months, we've had just a string of the big
one problem.
And the reason why we asked that, first, it was fun and everyone had fun, but it almost became like a science experiment, if you will, because we were able to deduce, okay, these types of people pick this type of fighting the duck scenario, and these type of people pick this, but now it's kind of all.
It's all been big ducks lately. Because you're still technically under supervision, are you allowed to still associate with people you were locked up with?
I am. So that's like a common misconception that felons can't be around felons, and I get that a lot. But the thing is I can be around people that are doing positive things in their life. So
Mhm.
even someone that's incarcerated, if our correspondence isn't about illegal activity or
Yeah.
if they're talking positively and I'm encouraging them, then my parole officer definitely encourages that.
That's
So, and
cool.
there's not a stipulation in my parole that prevents me from that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I imagine it would be hard to spend 10 years building those relationships and then yet again have your stability yanked out from under you because now you can't associate with. I know in Nevada, like you can't house arrest um or probation to someone there's a felon. Where there's a felon living.
Right. And in Texas, it's the same. If I had somebody here in the house that when I first paroled out, that wouldn't have been okay. And I think unless they're like an immediate family member. So yeah,
Is there anything you miss about being inside?
definitely the people.
Yeah,
You know, people don't like to change is hard, even when it's change for the better.
sure.
So not to say that I wasn't excited to get out, but I cried. I cried
Sure.
when I
Yeah.
left the unit that I had been on, and those ladies, some of which I was very close friends to, and most I will probably never see again. Um, and some will never even come out of there. I was on a maximum security unit. So when I'm leaving these ladies that have helped me and touched my life in such a positive way, and just knowing that their battle is still so long, it it's hard.
Yeah.
It was horrible. I miss them terribly. I miss them.
Yeah.
I have a final question,
Okay.
but it's going to be kind of woo woo. So if you want to ask anything before,
I'm trying to think. 'Cause I know we're running out of time.
yeah, here's my question.
Okay.
And humor me. I hand you a magic wand, and this magic wand can like portray what you want your life to look like. So 10 years from now, what do you want you, not some organization, not anything else? Like,
I could see the look on her face. She was like ending solitary confinement.
what do you, that's what I'm saying. Like,
We all
none of
were.
that stuff, like
We
something
all
for
were.
you. What do you want your life to look like 10 years from now?
10 years from now, I will be well versed in legislation and how that process works. I will be still actively pursuing some of my same goals with restorative justice. I see that my family has probably grown. I picture myself having had made enough money to buy our family's home, which is like it's a little bit in peril because it's on a reverse mortgage right now. And I feel like I could save that. I see big family gatherings, pool parties with my family, wrestling with my grandkids. Yeah,
Did
it's
you ever
there.
think you would be here? Like,
Never. No, I never thought that just social media has opened up so many opportunities that in prison were completely out of my realm of any kind of dream or hope. Never. I did feel like I would restore things with my family, and we're still working towards that, right? It's still a progression
yeah.
and ongoing thing. But no, never did I feel that my kids are proud of me, and it's something I didn't think it would only take this amount of time for that to get back. They send me text messages like, "Mom, I just saw this. I just read this newspaper article, or I read an interview that Rosie O'Donnell talked about you," or and they're just like, I'm just so proud of you," and it's a wonderful feeling. Yeah.
I love, first of all, I love your answer.
Mhm.
And I want to explain that real quick. You didn't have to search for it. It was almost as, I mean, I don't know if you do goals or anything like that, but like it was natural. Like, the things you want in life. Right. And I think that's where a lot of this good woo woo is coming from, is like you're focused, you know what you want, you're grateful, you're humble, you're like all these things, and you didn't struggle to paint a picture of what your life is going to look like for 10 years. And I think that's awesome, because a lot of people can't. And I ask I ask that question a lot of times, and for the most part, you know, like you can just test it on your friends and family. A lot of people don't know. And then the answers that they do, it's usually
Cars,
like,
money, clothes, shoes.
exactly. It's usually like super, super superficial.
Yeah.
And like, that's it. So I'm blown
It's
away.
amazing.
by
I'm
this stuff.
stoked. So
Yeah.
what did we learn?
We
The wrap up.
learned, I don't know. That's what I was trying to catch up, because I knew you were going to ask me that. Here's what I learned. That I'm going to go down like a serious rabbit hole even more. Because like I said in the beginning, like I selfishly didn't try to consume too much of your stuff, because I wanted to like really absorb everything. But I'm glad I did, because now I kind of at least feel you're not a gimmick. You're not just trying to catch a hot trend. Like you actually give a crap.
Imagine if formerly incarcerated was the hot trend.
Well, you kind of see that,
Right.
don't you? You see it online though, right?
Sure.
It
Prison
is.
prison talk is a big thing.
Yeah.
And I think that hearing prison stories is kind of a now
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So I didn't, before I did this, I never realized that as much as we incarcerate people, Americans are obsessed with prison culture.
Yeah.
Like when you can go to Alcatraz and they sell like the prison plate, I'm like, why? People are like, you can take it home. I'm like, in Nevada,
Yeah.
up north, right adjacent. So we have a prison town where I don't know if it's our main prison anymore, but it used to be the main prison is. You can eat in the old jailhouse. It's a steakhouse now. And if you're lucky, you can get a seat in a cell. I was like, I'm not doing that. It's bizarre.
Yeah, that's crazy. And she's kind
People
of
love
proven
it.
my point. Like you're not that.
No.
You're not coming from that place. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this, by the way.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks
Yeah.
for having me. Y'all are awesome. I appreciate y'all so much.